When Bob Iger returned to the Walt Disney Company, he said that his primary goal was to find his replacement, and after that was fixing the creative engine of the Walt Disney Company. Well, he's still there, and they still haven't found his CEO replacement, and it seems that they would like to say the creative engine is fixed, with massive hits like Inside Out 2, Moana 2 doing much better than anyone could have expected, and of course, Deadpool and Wolverine pulling massive numbers for the company. Well, Captain America 4 is the next one on the block, premiering on January 14th, and it looks like it's tracking at around $85 to $95 million. Let's see how that compares to Captain America Winter Soldier back in the day. Be careful about adjusting for inflation on that one. Let's talk about it on That Park Place.
Captain America Brave New World box office projections show similar opening to Winter Soldier. And that's a very bad thing for Marvel. Yeah, Winter Soldier. When did that come out again?
2015?
Was that 24?
14?
Yeah, 2014, 2015.
Yeah.
Ooh. Think about the inflation, guys. Here we go, January 14, 2025. This by Marvin Montanaro. With just a month until release, Captain America Brave New World is already facing criticism for what looks to be a lackluster opening weekend box office performance. Projections from Sean Robbins at Box Office Theory estimate the film will earn between $81 million and $107 million domestically in its first weekend, the likely figure of $96 million. While certain media outlets are painting this number as a win, a closer comparison to past Marvel successes reveals a very different story, one that suggests the MCU is in significant decline. Some media outlets have rushed to frame these numbers as positive, highlighting the $96 million figure as a solid opening for a February release. On paper, the projection might seem decent, but when you consider that this film is opening on a 5-day weekend that features both Valentine's Day and President's Day, and hold it against the backdrop of the MCU's former glory, the cracks in Disney's once dominant franchise become glaringly apparent. For example, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania opened to $106.1 million in 2023, a number that initially seemed respectable, especially considering the performance of the previous two Ant-Man films. But it quickly lost its luster when the film experienced a historic second-week drop and ultimately bombed with $214 million in the domestic box office. $106 million. That's, I mean, now, like, if Captain America 4 achieves $106 million, I mean, that's the high end, folks. And that's what Quantumania achieved. And even Bob Iger has said, yeah, you know what? We made some mistakes when choosing that film and creating it and putting it out in theaters. Well, I mean, if you've seen the film, absolutely. But, you know, the company doesn't usually come forward with that kind of information if things are even perceived to be successes. For the amount of money they're spending on this film, culture, please, your thoughts on this?
This is going to be catastrophic. If the prevailing thoughts rule the day and the test screenings continue to be bad, despite recent reshoots that happened up through the end of November, beginning of December, and you've got to fit this into a window coming out on the Valentine's Day, you've got some problems. They've admitted they've got continuity issues because they kept changing the story. They've gone through various different scripts. They will have a complete script rewrite. They reshot all 3 acts of the original film that they shot before. They've got adding characters. They've got subtracting characters. I mean, entirely from the film. You've got a little known bad guy group here in the Serpent Society, and you know a lot of it doesn't make sense. You've got the issues with Sam not having been a super soldier that they're going to try to explain away with Wakanda tech garbage. The audience has already widely rejected a lot of their fixes to their nonsense. So the look forward doesn't look good. And as the numbers on the projections go downward instead of upward, they've got a problem. And you pointed out the most drastic thing of all, right at the beginning during the introduction. This film, if it earns less than the 2014 Winter Soldier film, is a disaster for them. Because if it opens to those numbers, it's gonna be a financial flop. Regardless, this film is not on track for $1 billion. If it is, there's funny business going on in the background. The only film that looks like they may have saved it in the editing bay that's going to be coming out is going to be Thunderbolts, but even that's questionable. The calendar going forward for Disney, for Marvel, is awful. They have nothing anybody's going to get excited about. And if you're headed into this quote unquote doom garbage that we're going to get, if they fumble the beginning of that with the Fantastic Four, which it looks like they're already doing, especially with the storyline that's been leaked, if you believe that, this is just the beginning of a giant waste of money, a giant fireball of money that the Joker just lit on fire in a warehouse somewhere. I'm telling you, Disney because of the way they're approaching this, and they're trying to be more nuanced about their politics in these films. You still have politics in these films, and despite the fact that you believe the audience is stupid, they're not. Anyway, I got to talk an awful lot. I should be quiet, but I'm going to tell you this: I don't expect much, Vash. I think this is gonna finish in that $80 million range on opening weekend domestically in North America, and that's not good. That's below the, I think, 107, 108. No, it's actually more than that. It was bigger. Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania opened bigger than what this film is projected to open. That's crazy.
Yep. It's this is bad, folks. And to just highlight how bad it is, Culture, he might be understating it, to be honest with you. That's how bad it is right here. Here you go. You mentioned before how actors and people featured in the film, and they took out Seth Rollins on the set of Captain America 4. This is at the time when it was a New World Order and not Brave New World. WWE superstar Seth Rollins, whose role in the film was entirely cut during reshoots, confirmed the chaotic nature of the production, speaking to YouTuber Chris Van Vliet. Rollins said, "I am not in the movie. I don't want anybody to go in thinking, hey, I'm here to see Seth Rollins. There might be two people who would do that, but I don't want those two people to waste their time. I don't want to misinform anybody.
Wow.
I don't want to lead anybody astray. I am not in this film." So to put it into...
okay,
please, go ahead.
First of all, no, but the way that was phrased, the way he phrased that statement, I don't want anybody to waste their time. He's projecting that the film is trash. That statement is call it into question because of how he phrased it. I don't want anybody to waste their time.
Yes, absolutely. And here's the thing. Disney's going to need a lot of people to waste their time on this film in order to make it back. And the tracking just simply does not support that. The Quantumania comparison, I think, is very, very good. I think Marvin should be praised for both that and the comparison to Winter Soldier, because those are, obviously MCU films. But this tracking, especially where it's placed right here, I mean, I was trying to look for a comparable that was a little bit more in tune with how the market is supporting films. And I think the most recent film that can even be comparable to this is Wicked, with its opening. Remember, it opened to $114 million domestically. Now, again, that's beyond the high end for Captain America 4. But even within its life, and given that this film hit streaming back in December, its box office life is basically expired here. It only achieved, and remember, the big marketing push that Comcast put out for this specific film right here. And remember that people saw this over and over again because of the musical aspect of it. And yes, even though it did cater to a different demographic, its opening was very comparable. It only achieved $700 million. Folks, if Captain America 4 only achieved $700 million at the box office, that's a huge loser. It's going to need well over $1 billion to make its money back, because we're talking with the reshoots involved and everything, this film eclipsing well over $350 million. That's probably on the low end of that figure. You have people in the media already saying, let's face it, Captain America: Brave New World is going to be bad. And for Wicked's prospects, that was because I think a lot of people went in there thinking that it was a good film. If Captain America underachieves, both, I would say, with the with the reception from the public and from the box office, this is going to be devastating. Culture.
Yeah, I look, my projection for this is it's going to fall very far short of $1 billion. I mean, if this made 800 million, I would be surprised. My expectations are very low. This film is not what anybody asked for. This is, in most fan estimations, not Captain America. You can put, you have somebody hold the shield. You can have somebody wear the wings. In this situation, the person holding the shield isn't Captain America. The person wearing the wings is Falcon. And you know what, Sam Wilson as Falcon, and our friend Captain America had wonderful adventures together that they absolutely could have done, and that would have actually made Sam Wilson's character more popular and more influential in Marvel overall. Instead, they tried to take the mantle or remantling of Captain America in a different direction than the comics, even, who, made Bucky, Cap. Although anytime they replace Cap originally, nobody likes it. It's not as popular as the other. And that's the thing that Disney just refuses to learn from. If you want to make, quote unquote, these virtue signals of diversity and garbage, then you have to do it with an original character, or a character that was originally that. You cannot remantle these characters, especially, across racial divides and across gender divides. It just can't be done. It's not done well. Setting that all aside, I liked their version of Sam Wilson. I really did,
Yeah.
and I really miss that. That was an opportunity missed. One of my favorite comic characters growing up, which is insane because it was, a C-lister at best. So it just was much like Iron Man, right? These characters that weren't exactly the top tier at Marvel were somehow my favorites, and then I grew up and they became movies. It was pretty cool.
Yep.
This doesn't have the sense of that. There's no wonder anymore. And in the back of everybody's mind, they know why these things are being done, and that it takes away from the movie anyway. So you're constantly
Yes.
pulling away from the the primary interest of cinema, which is escapism, because you can't. If this is why these decisions are being made, how's that an escape? That's an intrusion. And all these new television shows and films that are based on the virtue signaling are essentially an intrusion of today's modernity, which is the right way to say that. So anyway,
Yeah.
I've rambled on, but this thing, because of how much it's cost so far and how much the marketing is costing and everything else, it's done.
There's no way. There's just no way. $700 million is not going to do it. It's not going to do it. And again, that's on the high end there. That's what people, re-seeing it in theaters over and over again. Obviously, it's going to have a little bit more PLF space than maybe something like Wicked did back in the day. But I mean, you're going to have people really support this film, and they're just not showing up, which is why I think you have Chris Evans returning, because, like you said, the character of Sam Wilson is a fantastic character. I really did like him, all the way up up until Endgame. I think his arc was really well done, and how he found confidence in himself, fought alongside Captain America in so many great times in the MCU's history right there. And the On Your Left stuff, it's great stuff. The fact that they would thrust him in the role, however, was a bit forced, bit rushed, and now I think we're seeing the detrimental effects with a decision like that. I think Disney is kind of waking up in a similar way that Bob Chapek was trying to push this company. Remember, he was the guy that was kind of like, hey, if we're going to do the MCU right, we really need our main characters back. Because thinking from a consumer product standpoint, these are our most marketable characters, and they really should be embodying these roles. Chris Evans returning, but that's the mission. I think that the Sam Wilson as Captain America experiment didn't quite work out the way they wanted to, and we saw that with the comics, by the way. Like you said, Culture, whenever they do this in the comics, it hasn't been super well received.
No,
it just didn't go.
And that's going way back before Disney had even owned Marvel. I mean, those comics, as they tried these experiments, they just didn't last very long. They weren't very popular runs. And, outside of collectors, and that's the biggest problem, is when the collector market started to get so big and there was speculation, just like with baseball cards and stuff like that. The minute it goes to collectors, then, it usually turns badly. And comic collectors would buy those runs and they'd be part of their pick lists and stuff like that. But why the regular readers, the people that actually read the comics, albeit maybe with gloves on or whatnot to try to preserve their value, but they just weren't buying into these newfangled schemes to revitalize a character. Marvel realized at several points in their history that story was the thing that led the day or won the day or ruled the day. And once they leaned back into story every time they ran up against a wall, they released some great books. But again, I mean, you take the creatives out of any industry, the originals, the original creators and writers and all of that, you're going to have a deterioration in the storytelling and in the art and all of that. Same thing happens in film and television. It's why shows only go for X number of seasons. It's why, films, they get to a certain point of audience exhaustion. You can only do so many Rambos. Okay. You can only do, so many of X. And it's not just because of the deteriorating actors, because you can certainly recast. James Bond proved that over multiple decades, 50 years of Bond. But what you can't do is you can't deviate from the generalized understanding of what a character is. And that's every time you remantle or you gender swap or anything, there's that. It is less expensive. This is absolutely true. I agree with you. If you move forward from each of these actors, but you have to genuinely recast them, which they're finally, I believe it's rumored, that they're getting around to recasting T'Challa. Right? You can't have a Black Panther that's unbelievable. It's not sister. It's like, it doesn't work.
It just didn't. I mean, that's a whole
Kettle of fish
worms right there. Because because you're not expecting Chadwick Boseman to pass the way he did at the time that he did, and so you haven't really necessarily set up his successor in that way. So it's like, you're really left in a difficult position. With this, though, a lot of this stuff was avoidable. A lot of this stuff could have been set up properly. A lot of this stuff could have been handed off properly. We saw this with Star Wars, right? Where they didn't necessarily achieve the handoff I think they were looking for. You should have had really,
they didn't aim for that. They didn't aim for that. It was a real easy fix. You can move on to each generation of each child, each character's, offspring, and it essentially just follow the path of the extended universe, and you would have had a great handoff, and we wouldn't have had Ray all the time, because I got really freaking tired of that. Seriously, watch those movies now, and you will hear Ray's name from the end, towards the end of the first film all the way through the last film. You will hear Ray yelled several thousand times, and they every opportunity they walked away from. I mean, if you wanted to introduce that character of Finn, Finn could have been a great Jedi, right? And then you bring in Jason Solo, you bring in, I mean, you have all of these characters that you could have just moved forward with. No.
Now we're going to need the Ray supercut here from all three films. Oh boy, that's really something. Yeah. If you achieve that handoff properly, you can really set up some amazing stuff. Like you said, the EU, I think, did this brilliantly. Yeah. Where they first started off with the characters that you knew and love, and then as they established themselves in this New Republic era, that's when that handoff actually occurred.
I think that it tells you many things. And Latino Slant Polly, I think I'd make a great Black Panther, except that I wouldn't take the role because I wouldn't be the right ethnicity, let's say. But regardless, I think you could have done so much more with not just what you're talking about with Star Wars, but with Marvel. It would have been really easy to replace these characters, to recast them, to make the story work, right? The specialized process that was developed to extract what was part of the super serum, from Captain America to spawn one more super soldier, and it had to be somebody with the right makeup. So genetically, they chose the offspring of Captain America or Carter or whatever. I mean, there's 100,000 ways to go about it creatively, and have the audience accept it, right? You don't need divisive storylines to try to pass the torch like they did in Indiana Jones 5. You don't bring in an insanely dislikable character and actress to, pass the mantle to across, gender barrier garbage and everything else. I mean, again, this could have been done. Every single thing we talk about.
Thanks for watching That Park Plays News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.